So we are back for part two of a 4 or 5 part series regarding the history of shampoo and ultimately why shampoo in its current form exists today and why cold process shampoo is also a thing and fine, actually. And I will tell you more about what we are specifically talking about in that history line in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things, and you are here for week 23 of year 3 and part 2 in a shampoo history deep dive thing. And yesterday we discussed the history of shampoo for, humans and cleansing their hair and scalp from basically the beginning of recorded history to 1930. And we stopped at 1930 for a pretty specific reason, and that reason is there was a lot of development in the late 20s, early 30s that actually led us to what we now know as, proper shampoo. So a synthetic detergent shampoo that is not made using the traditional alkali and oils, solution to create soap. And stopping there is pretty important because, as I said, lots of information to go over with this particular one, and I wanted to give enough time to do that. So that's what we are going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about the history of detergents, synthetic detergents, why they were created, when they were created, how they were marketed, and really how we came to be reliant on them, and why I think that's one reason why we have so many hair problems and, woes today. But again, as I said in the first episode of all of this, this is not me actually taking a side on a synthetic shampoo, a commercial shampoo, or a cold process or hot process shampoo. I am not saying in this that either one is the right one. As I said before, it's not good to ever put yourself in that sort of like fundamentalist view, like it is this no matter what mindset, because as we advance and evolve as humans and our ability to research and study things more, the information changes and we have to be willing to let our mind change with it. And so this is literally just me going through the history of what I know about hair care over the centuries and what I know about hair care within the last century, and putting those pieces together and giving you my impressions on where we are now in our whole hair journey. And in order to really do that, we really do need to be looking at, the 1920s and the 1930s and the creation of synthetic detergents. Now, synthetic detergents are actually a very important factor in our lives right now for a number of reasons. Now, while this week is specifically about shampoo, detergents and synthetic detergents within the soaping world, we know all too well. This is something that us as artisan soap makers, as handcrafted soap makers, understand to be problematic for our skin, right? The creation of the synthetic detergents have resulted in a whole lot of skin conditions and more sensitive skin. And then you have the parabens and the phthalates and the sulfates and all the things that have been put into our cleansing products that we have found to be either irritating to current, sensitive skin issues, so they can exacerbate current skin issues, or can actually cause underlying problems that we didn't realize before. As I said, science continues to change, and while the reason for creating a synthetic detergent was a good one in its, inception, and I would argue a necessary one given the course of the world during that time, I don't know that it was necessarily the right place to stay. And we understand that with soap, right? We get that. Well, the same can be said about shampoo, because while all of these synthetic soaps were being created, all the synthetic cleansers using synthetic detergents, they were also creating shampoos that do the exact same thing. And so while there are benefits for sure to what we have learned and the research and the progress that we have made in these departments, there were some downfalls as well. But before we get too far into that, I think it's best to talk about the creation of synthetic detergents in the first place. And as I said in yesterday's video, it really didn't have anything to do with people giving a crap about the health and well-being of our hair or skin. And that is a really fascinating piece of history when it comes to our cleansing as humans, and I think that it's really important to talk about. So that's what we are doing today, and I hope you guys have as much fun with this as I have, and you can learn some cool stuff. So let's get started with why synthetics were created in the first place. First up, there was really 3 or 4 big reasons why synthetics were created, and they started really doing the research in the early 1900s, around 1909 to 1911. And the first ever synthetic detergent shampoo was not brought onto the market until 1933. There had been some versions before, but it was still a liquid version of an alkaline-based soap, right? So it was still essentially doing a hot process or cold process technique of soap with your alkali and your fats, creating what we know as soap, but in a liquid version to make it easier to apply to your hair. It wasn't until 1933 when the first non-alkaline based shampoo hit the market, and that was through the use of synthetics. And the reason why there was this push to create a synthetic detergent for cleansing of the skin, for cleansing of the hair, for cleansing of our clothes, for cleansing of our dishes, was because of what was going on in the literal world at that time. So think about what was going on in 1933, right? We had already dealt with World War I, we had already dealt with the Great Depression, we had already dealt with the farm crisis, and we were ramping up to start World War II. And as I'm sure most of you know, during wartime, rationing was a whole ass thing, and animal fats were actually in short supply because the animal fats that would otherwise be used and rendered to make these products, to make soap, to make shampoo, to make laundry detergent, well, they were now needed for consumption or to create other things that were needed for the war efforts. And so that's something very important to keep in mind. The creation of synthetic detergents had a lot to do with rations and not having animal fats. This is also interestingly when they started really developing all vegetable oil products for all consumer cleansing needs. Now, this is not to say that vegetable oil soaps didn't already exist, because of course they did. We have the history of soap making that we can go back to and look at all of that. But one of the big pulls for the need to do the synthetic detergents, in addition to the war and the rationing and the animal fat shortage, was the farm crisis that also occurred, thus making surfactant creation a critical need. And then after the farm crisis, we have the Great Depression, and then it becomes this whole thing, this whole big global eco mess. Was essentially there's not enough stuff to go around to, feed the humans, to clothe the humans, to cleanse the humans. And so they had to start making some innovations within the detergent world at the very least. Now, as we've talked about a whole lot, because this is a soap channel, the whole point of a soap is a surfactant. And cold process, the alkaline soaps, the way that we make them, it's the best, easiest surfactant that there is, right? And the whole point of a surfactant is to cleanse. And that is actually aided because of the alkaline nature of the soap itself. And so that became a real challenge for researchers and developers that were trying to create a synthetic soap that would still cleanse, that would actually break down the barriers and enable things like oil and dirt and grease and debris to be washed away. And realistically, the first detergents that were made, like for the clothing, like the first versions of Tide, for example, they were really bad cleansers, like really bad. They were not good at doing their job. They had removed the alkalinity of it, but they were not successful in actually getting clothes clean. Like I said, that is a completely different video in and of itself, but wild, really fun history if you're into that sort of thing. But anyway, if detergents were created and shampoos were created as an alternative to the traditional way that we were used to cleansing our hair and our skin, there had to be an incentive. There had to be a buy-in. We as humans don't like change, just across the board. We tend to just resist that whenever we possibly can. It's a very interesting part of human nature. And so these companies that used to be candle makers, that used to be cold processed soap and shampoo makers, had to find new creative ways to actually market this newfangled product to the masses, to encourage them to use it, and that it was better, actually, than the shampoo, the soap, that we had been using to cleanse our hair before. That marketing campaign was really effective, right? I mean, P&G has long been seen as one of the innovators in marketing, in that they would make bold steps, take bold steps during times of crisis, during, again, Great Depression, World War I, et cetera, and so forth, to market these new products that were coming out. And so before, where it was just washing your hair was the most boring thing ever. You grab a bar of soap and you do the thing, right? It became all of these ads saying things like, you have dull and lifeless hair, and wouldn't you like to have hair that is shiny and smooth and silky and healthy looking? And it was during this time that they started really leaning into celebrities and models and spokespeople for their brands to really showcase the most beautiful hair ever. And hey, you can have it too with this brand new synthetic detergent shampoo. I'm using Procter & Gamble a lot as an example here because it's kind of the most famous one within, the United States. But this was occurring in Germany. This was occurring in other companies within the United States as well. The marketing was going to be incredibly important for the general public, essentially, to go ahead and agree to sign on to this innovative, new synthetic detergent when they'd been doing their hair cleansing and everything wildly different for literally centuries before. And again, I cannot overstate the importance of these innovations, right? It's great that we use science to benefit us during times of war, during times of, famine, and needing all of these other products to, all these oils and everything to make other products. But this was born out of necessity. It was a necessary next step. And without the marketing, I genuinely do not believe that the population at large would have accepted and embraced shampoo in totality the way that it did. Because the synthetic shampoos at that time were actually worse for your hair than, regular traditional soap shampoo, in that it was making your hair dirty because it wasn't actually, removing the bonds and the particles. All the things. It wasn't an effective surfactant, essentially. And so it went through lots and lots of changes over, the course of the last, 100 years to create a definitely much, much better, liquid detergent shampoo. But in the beginning times, yeah, it was a tough sell. It was a tough, tough sell to get humans to actually say, yeah, this is necessary. I'm going to do this because, doing my part for the global world, but also going to deal with the fact that my hair isn't looking or feeling as good as it used to when I was just washing it with soap. And so the marketing tools became very, very impactful. And unfortunately, as we have seen in the history of marketing, the reason why they were so impactful is because they did really focus and center themselves on humans' insecurities. Wherein somebody did not think that they ever had dull or lifeless hair before, well, they certainly did after seeing all these beautiful models with shiny hair and being told, well, you've basically been using shampoo wrong. This is marketing in the cosmetics world that we still buy into and, are fed by today. All this is not to say that, the surfactant-based shampoo was a bad thing. It is a good thing, absolutely. And following the 1930s, again, so many innovations have been made. Formulas have changed, especially when we find out that, insert detergent here or, compound here is bad for your hair or your skin or, your body in general. And so these formulas have changed over the years in order to ensure that the end user is actually getting a superior experience to, a soap shampoo, but also they're not getting any consequences, i.e. it's bad for your health. And so that's a good thing. Innovation is good. And the marketing with all of this did get a little bit crazy. And I think this is why we continue to exist where we do today and why people are so intent on believing that, the liquid shampoos, the synthetic shampoos are better than a soap shampoo, because we've been, again, forced to believe in a lot of ways that everything that we've been doing is wrong, and you can be perfect and your life can be changed with this one shampoo. And wouldn't that be great? Also, during this time, the cosmetics industry was hitting a boom. While the farming crisis and farmers were making nothing, cosmetics industry was absolutely booming. People wanted to be prettier and all of the things. And so a lot of new companies came on the scene at this time, really kickstarted actual good change and innovation that we have within, synthetic detergents across all of our home uses. A very net positive when it's all said and done that synthetic shampoos were created. I don't think that that means that soap shampoos are therefore bad, though, but that's certainly what we were told. And that really was one of the very effective marketing tools. You see it in the ads that I posted on the screen earlier. Every single ad for like the Dream shampoo or whatever that makes your hair silky and smooth and lustrous, it contains a blurb underneath that says washing your hair with a soap-based shampoo is bad. It's awful. It's drying. It's not conditioning. It's all the things. And so I do think that that's really dishonest marketing and stuff that we've just kind of stuck with for far too long. And I think it's important to keep that in mind when making a determination as to whether or not there is a right way to cleanse your hair, be it soap shampoo or, surfactant synthetic detergent shampoo. And there it is, shampoo and the history of synthetic detergents, basically from the 1930s to the 1970s. The 1970s, we did experience a bit more of a shift, and I think that that is where we started getting real problems, the real problems that we're sort of like pushing against today in, the 21st century in 2023, which we will talk about in the next video. But yeah, a lot of moving parts actually contributed to the ultimate goal of creating the synthetic detergents. So again, 2 world wars, a Great Depression, the farm crisis, all of these things sort of combined to create the need for a synthetic detergent. Creating the synthetic detergents themselves, it was a very interesting process and a very cool one, to be perfectly honest. And as we'll talk more about in the next video, the ingredients that were used to create these initial, synthetic detergents, as we get better with our research and our knowledge base and what we know causes, X, Y, or Z condition in a human body, those things started being removed and replaced with other safer, alternatives. It is still important to note, though, in this time period from the 1930s to really the 1970s, it was still very much common practice to wash your hair not a lot. We're not talking about a month at a time between hair washes anymore, but certainly not every day. And so, regardless of what you were putting on your hair and whether it was stripping your hair of its needed oils and messing up the acid mantle or whatnot, since you were only using it once a week, it's really not messing it up that much, right? So really the trend that we do still have from, the before time to synthetic shampoos is you're still washing your hair kind of sparingly. And so in the next episode, we will be talking about when that shift happened. And so basically from the 1970s to kind of where we are now, as far as shampooing and hygiene and all of that goes, and why I think that maybe we are at a place where we need to step back and maybe go back to some old tried and true ways of, cleansing our hair. But that is for the next video. I hope you guys found this really interesting. I super do find all of this fascinating. I love history. I love looking into all of this. And so when I have an excuse to share that with people, I do. And so I have an excuse with this particular thing. So I've now shared it with you. If you're interested in part 3, definitely subscribe, click bell, things. Cool. For those of you who have subscribed, clicked bell, things, you're cool. You're a sudzer, and you're amazing, and I hope you're having an excellent day. I appreciate you being here with me, and I will see you next time for another round of shampoo, science, soapy fun. Bye. Okay. Let's see if we can sync this damn audio this time. It is driving me nuts that it is desyncing. Like, for sure. I do not anticipate that working.